Hello everyone, and welcome back to OWL by the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things Fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, Emily Drunk, tonight at episode 14. We're going to reflect back on the player performances in the first Overwatch League homestand that took place in Dallas. We'll, let you know who to pick up this week on the waiver wire, make our picks for some of the marquee matches in the final week of Stage 2, as we get prepped for the Stage 2 playoffs, and so much more. But before I can introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us live tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. As you can tell, Bob is not joining us tonight. I know he is resting his voice after a very, raucous crowd in Dallas for the homestead weekend.
Not a very raucous crowd, actually, if we're going to go that way.
I mean, it was like 70-30, probably differential between Dallas and Houston. But, Bob was doing a lot of shouting. I think he's still planning on podcasting later tonight for, OWL recap. So go show them some love after our show finishes. But...
Yeah, not during.
Yeah,
after
you wait. You wait, get your fantasy tips, and then go over.
Yeah, no, you have to listen to us first.
But joining me tonight, we do have two of my co-hosts. We have my Heroes Never Die co-host, Edinar, and of course, we have my fantasy Overwatch partner in crime, Ramses. Gentlemen, how has your week of fantasy Overwatch League been this past week?
Also, one-time Heroes Never Die co-host, so...
This is all true.
Ed and I slowly becoming one and the same at the same time. I'm pretty good tonight. How are you guys?
Feeling good. We picked up a big win.
We did. Who do we beat this week, Totem? I forgot.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a crazy close match. And if we would have played it, we're the only two teams in our league to play 7 players that were actually playing.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be a phenomenal match.
I remember Ed DM'd to me. He's like, our match is really close. And I'm like, to be honest, I haven't even looked. And then it ended up being 100-point differential.
At one point when I tweeted you that, it was about a 20-point difference between the two teams. But then we hit the last 2 matches, and one of those was a 5-mapper, which really just set us back. So, right. I don't know. Ramses, you did fill in for me on Heroes Never Die, but you failed at hitting the 2-hour mark. So you're a giant disappointment.
Well, I mean, the audio track itself was 2 hours.
Yeah,
as
you
far
can't
as what was
include talking before and after the show.
Yeah, as far as what was on stream, maybe, but.
No, it was. I mean, it's been a great week. It was like the nerd week from all Get Out nerd weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You had Game of Thrones, you had Avengers Endgame, which I saw twice. Go see it. Best movie. The best movie moment I've ever had in my life was from Avengers Endgame. It had the NFL draft this weekend, so I took off Thursday and Friday from work, and I went to the casinos. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I went to the casinos in Vegas, not Vegas, in Dubuque, Iowa. So I went down there.
The Vegas of Iowa, of course.
The Vegas of Iowa, and went down there and gambled and watched the draft and caused a scene.
Do you have any money on Daniel Jones going number 6, or?
No. I actually bet on Haskins to go on that pick. But what me and my buddy do is we gamble on each pick. So, I'll put $5 down, he'll put $5 down, and then we'll pick who we think is going to go, and then we just go back and forth through all the picks. So that's a lot of fun. And then, of course, the Dallas homestand was this weekend, so I was able to catch all that. So I'm still recovering from this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I did win in my other 3 leagues, though. So I went 3-1 this week.
I think it's important that we tell listeners that at this point in the season, you might be getting maybe a little tired from fantasy, having to keep it up every week, maybe having to change your lineup. We just ask that keep pushing, keep working hard, so you don't end up like our missing co-host tonight, Blazing Bob, who gets to use the excuse of, I lost that one time, so I haven't checked this league back in a while. I was at an airport, so I completely gave up on this league because I couldn't draft half my lineup.
That is possibly the worst Bob impression I've ever heard in my life.
I'm not good at it.
Well,
No,
man, how many
you're not.
Bob impressions have you actually heard in your life, though, Ed?
Well,
I feel like
I've
this is a
heard
small
one,
sample size.
and it was bad. It's the best and the worst impression I've ever heard of Bob at the same time. That's hard to do, Ramses.
Yeah, and you know, like, if for our listeners out there that didn't see my tweet last night, what's been interesting about, like, our Overwatch League network host league is that everyone has a different record. So you look at the win-loss column, and, you know, our Ed is at, like, 8 wins and 1 loss, and then goes 7-2, 6-3, 5-4. So you just look at it, and it just goes 8 all the way down to, like, 1 win, and then, you know, it's the exact opposite when it comes to the loss column. And I've never been in a fantasy league of any kind that has had such, like, a unique stand-in where no one has an identical record. So I thought that was very interesting because, you know, regardless of who is playing and who isn't, or whoever wants to, you know, throw out an excuse here or there, it's just a rare thing to happen in fantasy leagues.
Oh, it's super rare to happen. Usually, you have like the clump of people that are around the 5-4 or 4-5 mark, right around there. Not to have any people be like, "Oh, nobody has the same record in an 8-person league through 9 games." Like, that's pretty insane. So,
Well, it's more clumped like looking at our foul play experts league because there's like the first place person, then Deathblow, and then there's a clump of A. Smith and Blevins, and then it's me and Totem. No, it's me and Bob. And then Totem, your winning streak didn't survive this week.
No, I only had like 3 people playing, so I was like, SOL.
wait,
feels
wait, why did you just say we have the person in first place? Why didn't you say who was in first place?
I didn't think it was important information.
That wasn't.
Really? I feel it's important. to
Well, I
me.
mean, if we're talking about everybody else who isn't you was underneath, then yes, you would be in
Yes.
first place. And
Everyone is below me.
Mhm.
congratulations.
Although Totem did get and I'll go over this when we go through waiver wire pickups. Totem did get a very good pickup from someone I dropped this week.
Mhm.
So
So
I'll
even
explain
then,
that.
even then, you're still you're still twisting the tables over there.
Mhm.
But yeah, my winning streak in the expert league sadly came to an end because I only had Zachary, KSF, and Cruz playing in that week. So it is what it is. But you know what?
Yeah.
You know, I made up a little bit of ground, so I can't complain too much. But outside of that, you know, things went pretty good this week, so I'm still happy. But, you know, of course, we are heading into the last week of Stage 2. We have the Stage playoffs right around the corner. A lot of moves that can be made. So, Ed, was there anyone in particular that you were looking to target this week in the waiver wire?
Yes, there was one in particular that I decided to go in on, and I mentioned I dropped Birdring for this player, and it hurts for me to say this.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Jake, go pick up Jake. Now, the reason I'm saying this is it was reported on stream this week during the broadcast that the Houston Outlaws told them that Jake will be in the lineup every match, or every map. So he's going to be in there because they want him in there for shot calling and leadership. And you saw that even during this week. He stayed in every single map while they literally rotated everyone else around him. And he just stayed constant in there. Now, with Jake coming up this week, he's one of the few people who has actually 2 matches this week.
Mm-hmm.
So even in a raw scoring, Jake's a great option. So, like, I dropped Birdring to pick up Jake. Not only because he plays 2 matches, because right now he's going forward. He's going to be permanent on that team. So Jake is a definite pickup this week for me because he won't just be in Brig Jail. He'll be playing, Jake Red. He'll be playing Farah. Like, he'll be playing other heroes like we saw this past weekend when, God help us, just don't play goats because you're just god awful. You are just god awful on goats. Just don't even play it. So Jake would be my number 1 pickup this week. that hurts me to say. Other than that, I mean, there's not a whole lot of pickups that you're going to really do this week because you got to understand there's one week left in this stage, and then we have a very long break. So don't go big on picking somebody up because you don't know who is going to be on what teams or stuff like that. There's no major trades coming this week, kind of like with Sleepy. Like Sleepy was an obvious, okay, he traded automatic pickup. We're not going to get that this week. So I wouldn't do too much tinkering unless you're in a Raw league and you have the roster's flexibility to pick up those people who are on 2-start weeks. So yeah, Jake would be the only one I think was worth a pickup, unless the obvious ones are still out there, like Fitz from Soul Dynasty or Marvel from Dynasty. Those are two who might be out there, but I don't even know if those two are guaranteed pickups because you never know what Soul's going to do during the off season.
What would you think about picking up Toby if you're in need of a healer?
No. I would not pick up Toby. One, because Toby is not a flex support. Yes, everyone fell in love with the boops. Well, you know what? It's flashy, but flashy generally isn't fantasy points.
Yeah, really the only time we've been seeing the main supports putting up points is when they do go to a Met 5. They still... I mean, there are a lot of situations where the main supports are still going to put up like 100 points a week, but, when you look at the field, that's just not going to be able to hold a candle to what your flex support would be averaging on really any week.
Yeah, like main supports right now, you always want to have them on, some of them on the roster, like at least one on your roster in case the meta changes. But their emergency starts only. Like, you can go out and pick up a starting main support any day of the week if you need an emergency start. And that's basically what they're relegated to at this point. Because, you're seeing them flex to some of them, maybe Ana. No, the flex supports are really doing the Ana work. Because Ana's not putting out the fantasy points that a normal Zen would do. But yeah, you're not seeing it from Mercy and Lucier. You're just not seeing any of the points from them.
I know for me this week, if you're looking at, raw scoring, teams that do have 2 games to play this week, I'd recommend looking at Yunjin for the Shanghai Dragons. I know he's been putting up some pretty consistent points, so if you need like a second DPS option, I would definitely give him a look. But really though, when you look at the teams that have 2 games this week, you have Boston, Houston, Seoul, San Francisco, Shanghai Dragons, Toronto, Vancouver, and Washington. Washington typically hasn't been putting up monster numbers. Sleepy's probably going to be the only one that would be playable, I would imagine. Corey... maybe, but like I still feel like Corey at this point is like a third strainer for like a DPS position at this point. But
in a 2-start week though, Corey's better option than any other non-2-start DPS player. Like, just plain and simple. If you have an option, I mean, even Prophet versus Corey this week, you start Corey. Just because he's playing 2 games.
In a raw scoring league.
Yeah, raw scoring league only. I'm not saying start him over Prophet in standard. That would be a total Ramsey move.
I mean, no, I'm gonna let it be. I'll let it be. I can't come back with anything at this point because my performance hasn't disqualified that. I was wondering, so with Washington, of course, how much faith do we have as far as...
None.
Oh no, it's not Outlaws. Not Outlaws related. Minor beg here. So Fleta, Soul Dynasty. What do we do with Fleta at this point?
I said last week you drop him. They're not playing Fleta.
I would not drop him right now. Just because, I mean, obviously he's not 100% not startable. He is not a startable player.
For sure.
But this close to this long of an off season, you wait to see if they get send him to another team. And if, like, by week 1 of stage 3, he's still on Soul Dynasty, he's droppable. Same can be said for a couple of other people, like Surefour.
Mm-hmm.
Surefour is droppable if he's still on the Gladiators at the start of stage 3. Like, Fissure. Fissure's pretty much droppable now, unless he gets sent to another team by the start of stage 3, so on and so forth. So some of these high-end premium backups, if they're still on their teams when stage 3 comes and they're still projected to be backups, they're droppable 100%. A prime example can also be with San Francisco. Like, a lot of people took Architect and are holding on to him, but like all signs indicate Architect has no chance of playing. Rightfully so, because
to an extent too. Like, Striker is in the same position.
Striker is in this. I actually had drafted Striker in at least one league, maybe 2, but I have him in no leagues right now because Striker is 100% droppable and not playable at this point because he's just. You're not replacing Rascal and Sinatra right now in really any meta because those two are just performing out of their minds. And Surefour doesn't have a shot of replacing Decay. The only shot that these people have is complete and utter shift in the constant meta to 3 DPS. And not like, hey, we're going to run it for one map. It needs to be every map we run 3 DPS, and that's really their only shot. So yeah, I would say Fleta hold on to till after this week and wait till closer to stage 3 before dropping him. But if he's still on Soul Dynasty, week 1 of stage 3, drop him.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting week too, with the travel weekend. We had a lot of experimentation getting done with some of these teams. I know Houston was trying some new tactics. Obviously, bringing Jake back into the starting lineup.
Trying being the key word.
Yeah, we gotta see a little bit more Linkser this past week as well. We gotta see the Hunters continue to kind of like rotate players in for a map out of the 4. Same with Paris and Danye, and it's been kind of weird, because, like, when you look at the averages per map, Danye probably had the best showing out of those substitution players, because he did put up 69.39 points, for his best, and, his combined score was 135.04, but, like, a lot of these players were probably someone that you probably had on your bench if you were looking for, someone for the weekend, since, all of these teams play 2 games. You might have had them in a slot, because at least you were going to get some points, rather than just putting up a goose egg. But looking at some of these players, we had Late Yun, who finished with 23.41 points. Bacon Jack had 24.98. Linkser had like 25 and 45. With Danye having the best out of the lot. But, it's crazy, because with the Hunters, I wouldn't consider Late Yun or Bacon Jack startable by any stretch of the imagination, but if it was like somebody you were just going to pick up for the week, I hope everyone had dropped him at this point, because, just putting up that many points is not going to cut it in the grand scheme of things. But with Houston Ramses, we've been seeing them at least trying to divert away from running the quote 3-3 meta. We did get to see Linkser and Jake running the, old school Anubis defense of the Widowmaker and the Junkrat. We also got to see a little bit of May as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Unfortunately, it did not bode well for the actual results, but it was more points than what we had been seeing from Linkser and Jake so far throughout most of this season. So, with that in mind, like, are we gonna enter a phase now where, you know, maybe we need to be a little bit more keen on Linkser if they're gonna be experimenting more as we move forward, or do you think he's still not startable at this point?
I don't think he's startable, but it's so tough to tell because we've seen these glimmers where it feels like Houston. I mean, it's every week we think that this is going to be the week that Houston does the multi DPS. Look how well it worked out for this first map or for this first round of King of the Hill, and then once they move away from that, it just all falls apart. I don't know if he's definitely not startable yet. He's definitely tradable buy low, sell high. I would hold on to him unless you like if there's something you need, go out and drop him for it. I don't know if he's necessarily worth, at least if you're trying to win right now, he's definitely not worth the short-term hold. We can always hope that with how long the break is between stage 2 and stage 3 that you're going to have time to go back in there and swoop him back up.
Yeah, and even like with a player like Shadowburn, who has been playing a vast majority of the maps, it was a rough week for a lot of Paris players. I know Shadowburn for his best game put up 93.95 points. If you're in a raw scoring league, he put up 154.99, so not the best average by any stretch of the imagination for a DPS player. And really, Ed, you know, Paris has been, I'd say, consistent performance-wise compared to like how they did in stage 1. You know, we've seen a couple more DPS looks out of them, but that hasn't really reflected in their fantasy scores so far throughout this stage, now that we have seen them run in a little bit more triple DPS. So when it comes to Paris, like, what are your thoughts on their DPS? Like, are Shadowburn and Soon like worth playing at this point, or do you feel like you're better off with some other options out there?
Soon. No, Soon was actually pretty good this week. He had 200. I think he was the number 2 scorer this week. 200 and some odd. Yeah, 200 and some odd points this week, in just in a single game. So he was the number 2 scorer overall. Soon is the one I would say is startable for Paris. I would not start Danye or Shadowburn because they seem to be the two that are sharing time, and you don't ever want the split, you know, DPS players. So Soon I think is startable. Gray has really stepped it up. Gray is very good on Ana, but also plays Zenyatta. So you're getting that output from Gray on the flex support role. But outside those two, I don't think anyone on that team is startable. You know, Cloudy now, Cruz, main support, just as good as Cruz is, and I know me and you told him have talked at lengths about how much we love Cruz, but from a fantasy point, he just doesn't perform.
Yeah, he had a pretty good week for main support standards this week. He put up like 147.5, which, you know, in my raw scoring league when I didn't really have options, he was someone that I started. So with 147, I was pretty happy. Like, it wasn't like top 20 by any means, but he was outscoring at least some of the flex supports this week, which is not something that you always get to see out of the Lucio players in the league.
Yeah, and they ran it a little weird this week because you had Nico in there too. So you had Nico, Shadow, and Danye kind of performing and being like, okay, who's going to play what? Who's going to do what? It's the same thing that went on with Houston.
Right.
Like, it's the same as the Spree, Linkser. God, who else did they throw in there?
Dante plays Diva as well sometimes.
Yeah, Dante, Arhan. You know, Arhan didn't play this. He was the only one who didn't play this week. But like they're in that same boat. So you have the one DPS player and Soon and Jake who were in there for every map, and then they have a rotating who's going to play beside that, and you just can't trust it. You can't trust DPS by committee type of situation. So Yeah, it's Gray and Soon and no one else for Paris
Mm-hmm.
in my book.
Definitely.
Yeah, were there anyone in particular that you thought would put up monster points that kind of like maybe average out this week? Because like I know like when we're looking at the stats, I know Crystal has been someone that we've been pretty high on. He put up like 112 points this week for his best score. Dante has kind of fallen on the wayside quite a bit as well. He only put up like 105 points. But I mean, I feel like a lot of that is just based on the fact that, you know, Houston is struggling. We do see them experimenting quite a lot. You have Dante, you know, either playing Sombra or Diva. And, you know, it's unfortunate because last season we were really hyping up Dante as being the best Sombra in the league. And, you know, on Houston, it doesn't seem to be that way because they're just not able to finalize the kills even when EMP is coming out.
He's
But-
the sleepiest Sombra in the league, if I can say that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But it's just with Houston, it's just a weird situation where it feels like they just don't have a diva player, and it's going to be really interesting to see how exactly they're going to try to go about solving that issue. If they're not going to be able to sign anyone new, if there is a sort of freeze of hiring people or whatever is going on with their parent company. So definitely something to keep an eye on. But is there anyone in particular that you guys were kind of surprised didn't put up a better performance this past week?
For me personally, it would be the DPS duo from the Spitfire. They both failed to score at least 140 points in either of their matchups, which is very rare for them because London is generally a very high scoring fantasy team, and both of them kind of shat the bed, really. The other one would be Note. I think everyone expected a lot from Note, and we just didn't get it. Really, the whole Dallas team, we didn't really get good fantasy scores out of
Right.
this whole week. Zachary, I believe, was their best DPS fantasy player this week. Over AKM, over Unco, over Note. So, you know, it's just the majority of the Dallas team, while yes, they won, they just didn't put up the fantasy numbers.
Yeah, they were all sub 150. Zachary was top with 149. AKM finished with 142 for his best game. But like if you're in a combined league, I think their differential was only like less than 2, so it was pretty close.
Yeah, but I'd have to go with the two DP and the Spitfire. Like those two, really, I'm shocked they didn't do better.
Yeah. I would also make the argument for Space from a combined standpoint. 261's all right, because 261 is all right. I'm just saying for what you paid for the guy, because this is the guy that you got for a first round pick who hasn't been. I see your face, Ed. I see your face. Hit me.
Okay, he was the number 4 tank on the week, and 2 of the tanks ahead of him played in an epic 5-game series. So both Goushway and Rhea outscored him. Like you got to take a look at it from the tank's perspective. It was Rhea, Michelle, and Goushway are the only tanks that scored more points than Space.
Right.
Like I would say, Space actually had a phenomenal week, and just the way he played.
Well, technically all of the top 5 that were tanks were all in map 5s this week.
Yes. So I don't know. I like, but Space was also in a 4-0 on the losing end of a 4.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think Space was an underperformer this week.
The other one I had, which I'm sure you would definitely agree with, would be Muma. Muma failed to break 200 this week. He got 198 for combined, 110 for best game.
He didn't fail at, you know, falling into the hole in university, was it?
Oh,
He got booped in there like twice. I think one of them was when he was like going for a charge and he just ends up falling in the middle of the map down below, and that's just a 6v5 against
Dude,
Houston.
Muma died first a lot.
It reminds me of like watching, like when I try to play comp and when I try to solo carry on Reinhardt, and then I just get the crap kicked out of me for it, because it seems like we're seeing Muma really try and go for the hero play again and again, and then when you have the outlaws behind you, you can go for it as much as you want, but it's not going to happen. Even so, for him not to break 200 in combined is really, I don't know. I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, it was surprising he didn't break 200. But like as a main tank, I think 250 would have probably been max that he could have scored. So yeah, he probably underperformed a little this week. But again, like you said, he plays for the Outlaws, and when he goes in, like yes, he died first a lot, but like when he went in, the crappy team behind him wasn't following suit and didn't know what to do. And so Muma would die almost instantly, and then he'd have to come back and he'd lose valuable fantasy numbers. So,
well, it happens when your team doesn't have a D.Va and a Brigitte player.
Or when you decide to run Somber Goats without a Zarya. That's a good
that too.
move.
Finalizing kills is a very important aspect.
You know who's going to do the DPS on the map? No one. Because you don't have a Zarya.
Well, anyways, obviously we had some weak performances this past week, but we also had quite a few standout performances, some of which were in 5-match series. Some of them even came from some main supports this week. Imagine that, a main support finishing in like the top 5 points this week. You don't see that every week, but Ramses, looking across the board, who were some of the standout players that you would nominate for Player of the Week for the homestand weekend?
Well, easy Player of the Week for me is Ryu Jae-hong. Number 1 for combined and number 1 for best scoring. The guy had a monster week. He was within touching distance of 400. He had 394.98 for combined, 237.80 for best. And I'll shut my mouth a little bit because I've never had a lot of faith as far as Jae-hong being like a top 5 fantasy point maker. And granted, they played 2 pretty weak teams this week, but even when we've seen these were games we thought that they were going to just shut out and roll and not really score a lot of points. And even though they did roll Houston and the game with the Valiant was a little bit more of a competition, he put up some really good numbers. I was impressed.
Yeah, like even in that 4-0, in that game alone, he still put up like almost 160 points, which is pretty. I'm not gonna say I think that would be above average at this point, just seeing how the flex supports have kind of fluctuated a lot in this current stage.
Well, with a lot more Ana play as well. What about you, Ed? Oh, I'm sorry, Totem. No, you're ready. Totem, who do you have for your Player of the Week?
For me, Ryu Jae-hong definitely put up some monster numbers. I feel like Fitz has really come into his own on the Seoul Dynasty, and we can finally put the whole Fleta situation. I said last week, don't bother, and Fitz has been starting in every single map. And I feel like Seoul across the board have been looking better, so for them to come out, 2-0 this past weekend, knowing that we have to face Vancouver again, was a pretty big deal. But outside of that, I know, Bebe put up some absolute monster numbers. Even combined, he was top 3. And that's a main support, and we never see that. So that was very surreal, because like even when if you look at his best score, it was 212.96. So even if you take that away as a main support, he still put up 146 in one of the games. That was not even in a map 5. So it's crazy to think that when you're looking at like the best 7 scores, like for an ideal like unlimited draft, I know I ended this up yesterday. I think the point total would have been like over 1,400 for the week. But Bebe put it up 212.96, which was probably, I'm trying to think like where that was even in like individual numbers. It had to have been top 10. I think it might have even been top 5. So just to see like how surreal that was for me, definitely elevated his game and, helped secure some wins for some people on a role that you wouldn't normally expect it to. So I was happy to see that.
Who do you have for your player of the weekend?
I'll go with the Father, Son, and the Holy Godsby.
Oh, you've been working on that all? Oh, wow.
Yes.
You've been working
I
on
was
that
holding
for the past
that
couple
in.
days.
Yes, I'm going with Godsby from the Spark. He was on Zarya. He flexed to Sombra and didn't suck like he has previously. Godsby was really kind of an all-star this week from the DPS point of view. So Godsby would definitely be one of my major ones. The other one was Gray. I spoke about Gray's Ana performance. It was pretty darn good. Gray has really, for Gray not actually playing a lot in Season 1 because Hip was playing in
Stage 1.
In Stage 1. Everyone drink. But when Hip was part of the godlike Paris Goats team before, they sucked, Gray was just sitting on the bench, and then when he came in, you could tell a night and day difference. So Gray's slowly become like a top 5 flex support player in the Overwatch League, and he kind of showed it a lot this week. So Godsby and Gray were my top 2 performers this week. I would have actually picked Gray over Jaehong. And as much as I love Jaehong, Gray was just so good. So good.
What's interesting too, though, is just the fact that at least with Jaehong, we almost feel like we're getting peak Jaehong back after all of this time. So it's really interesting to see, kind of like the old guard kind of coming back to the forefront after we've seen, honestly, a lot of diminishing returns with some of the OGs of competitive Overwatch. So I would say, like, right now, keep playing Jaehong if you have him, because he's definitely on a hot streak, and if he's able to put up these numbers in another week, he's definitely like a start 1 support moving forward at this rate, rather than a support 2 option in some cases. But we're entering stage 2, week number 5. The stage playoffs are on the horizon. We got quite a bit at stake. We got quite a few marquee matches, and we have 3 matches on Thursday and Friday, which I definitely want to note, because on those days we'll be starting at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, so keep that in mind whenever you're going to be tuning into the Overwatch League this week. But Ed, taking a look at some of the marquee matches, why don't we go ahead and start with one of the more intriguing matches, because we have some of the bottom stage 2 teams going head-to-head, slugging it out to see who is the superior option between the Charge and the Outlaws.
Well, as the highest scoring pick'em player of the Overwatch League Network podcasters, I feel it is my duty to spread onto you my wisdom of these pick'ems. So in the Guangzhou Charge Houston Outlaws, I am going with the Houston Outlaws on this one. I think they're going to pull it out. I think their newfound... They have to be smart about it. If they want to run goats on a map, they need to have both Spree and Coolnat in there. You need to have Spree on the Zarya if you're going to be running a Zarya successfully with the Houston Outlaws. So they need to make sure to do that. So I have the Outlaws winning this one. Totem, who do you have winning this one?
This is one of those instances where I really wish the picks were up this week, just so I could see what the split is. Because out of all of the games that are going to be played in Stage 2, Week 5, I feel like this is going to be the one that is either going to make or break you on whether you climb or fall this week. Because with the experimentation the Outlaws have been doing, I feel a little bit more confident, but the fact that we haven't really seen excellent diva play out of them, or their lack of wanting to run, Zarya in some cases, I'm very tentative to say that the Outlaws are going to look like the better team. But at the end of the day, you have two teams that are kind of at their lowest points.
You can say crappy.
Yes.
Two crappy teams.
Yes, they have not looked good in either case. I feel like between the two, the Charge have the more skill. And I think they've been a little bit more consistent, so I'd give the Charge the edge, but I'm not very confident with that answer either. But Outlaws have only won 2 maps this stage. They're 0-5 right now, so I think the Charge are going to take it. I think it will be a close series. I would expect this one to go to a map 5. But if you're the Outlaws, if you don't win this one, that doesn't look too good for you. You're probably going to finish 0-7 this stage.
Yeah.
Request, Totem, do you think we see Rise from the Guangzhou Charge at all this week?
He turned to 18 today. He is a flex support, so no. I do not think we're going to get
He's
Rise
not going to replace
over
Shu.
Shu.
Shu's the best player on that team, far and away.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if he was any other position, maybe not replacing Shu. So, next matchup, we have the Boston Uprising versus the LA Gladiators. I'm super high on the Gladiators. A lot of people are. They're really meshing well together. Decay is, Decay, because he's awesome. And Boston Uprising is just, I don't know. I don't think they can go toe-to-toe with Gladiators on this. I don't think Fusion Magic is going to really come around on this one. So I'm picking the Gladiators on this one. Due to the DPS from the Gladiators will outdo the Boston Uprising DPS. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but it's going to be a 3-1 or 3-2 in favor of the Gladiators. So that matchup's on Friday. Ramses, who do you have?
I'm going with you. I'm going Gladiators. I think Boston have the potential to reverse sweep it, but I'm not 100% confident it's going to happen. I think that if you're going to go position by position, like you said, Roar is the superior main tank over Fusions. I think he wins that matchup decisively. And then with DPS, Color Hex and Blase have both been really good. And they've been very good point earners. But like you said, Decay is Decay. Decay is the guy who's good enough to perma-bench Surefour for this entire state. Except for the maps they want to run him on Bastion. So, Gladiators take it. I would go 3-2.
I just want to see some Doomfist out of Blase, because we haven't been able to see that as of yet.
Please.
Yeah, Doomfist from Blase, Genji from Decay. That is what I want to see in this matchup.
See, if we could get the double Doomfist from Hydration and Blase, just fists flying everywhere.
Everyone's getting fisted. Yes.
I found the
I've been
tagline for
waiting
the
all
episode,
season
Totem.
to see that, but it finally makes its way in.
Are you trying to herald back to the H&D days of Doomfist Me Daddy?
Yes.
Which, by the way, is always trending on when you search for like Overwatch League, and that just makes me smile. It's always constantly top 10.
All those Ed reviews on iTunes make sense now.
What? Yeah. I haven't got a negative review in a while. Not that one.
I gotta log in really quick.
Then I've let him know of,
It's been a good month. So the next matchup is hands down the matchup of the week, and that is the Seoul Dynasty versus the Vancouver Titans. You have the Korean versus the Korean mega teams. Two of the top 3 all Korean teams facing off against one another. as good as Seoul has looked with their B team, in their, I don't see them taking over the Vancouver Titans. The Titans are just too good. The only thing is this isn't even Vancouver's first matchup of the week. Like,
No.
I was thinking maybe Seoul could, like, jump on them for having, like, such a long time off.
Yeah, Titans play back-to-back days.
Yeah, they play Friday and Saturday, so it's not they're going to be their first. So they'll be warmed up. Yeah, no. I'm thinking Titans in this one, and either 3-1 or 4-0. I think they're going to want to make a statement win out of this.
Totem, how hard it is at watching your dad's fight again.
It's rough. I mean, 2 times in the same stage. I don't know if my heart can take it. Here's the thing. Right now, Seoul are 3-2. 4-3 is definitely the cutoff point for being able to make the Stage 2 playoffs. And seeing as this is probably going to be another loss, the one thing Seoul has going for them right now is their map differential. They have a +6 map differential, so I am hoping that this isn't going to be a 4-0 in this situation, because if it's a 4-0, that's going to lessen their shot at actually making, like, the 8th seed to make the stage playoffs. So, being optimistic, I'm hoping for a map 5. I don't think we're going to get that. I think Titans are going to take this 3-1. But, looking back at the prior stage playoffs, Dynasty did play Titans fairly close, but Titans just seem to be speedrunning everything when it comes to the Overwatch League this season. At this point, Titans will have the stronghold on the longest win streak in Overwatch League history, which they're currently tied for. So once they get through, I think it's Toronto for their first match this week, they'll break the record, and then they'll look to break it again as, they continue to set that win streak record. But, man, it's just crazy thinking, Shock, Titans, and Gladiators all have a very good shot at finishing 7-0 this stage. But
Oh, yeah.
as a Dynasty and a Titans fan, I'm looking forward to this one, but it's always one of those situations where I just want to see this game be closer, just because the Titans have looked at times untouchable outside of that Stage 1 finals match.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, don't take what the Stage 1 playoffs matchup was, because the Seoul Dynasty is a much different team than what it was in Stage 1. So, this is going to be a different matchup, and hopefully we get this one. But next, the last one we're going to go over is the Sunday matchup, and that is the Toronto Defiant versus the Paris Eternal. A battle of 2 teams that both mean nothing to the league at this point. Like, they're not the worst teams in the league, but they have no real chance of making the playoffs. Like, they're in that 12 to 16 range of teams. So in this matchup, I'm going to go with the Paris Eternal, actually. I think Toronto has a shot, but I think the I'm 37 playing Zarya and not Ivy, like, they're just playing it wrong. And if they stick with that, I think Paris will get the upper hand of them on this. Toronto has not been that impressive at all this stage.
No, not at all.
Paris has shown flashes of Paris has shown flashes of we can run some crazy DPS combos with, like, when you're bringing Shadowburn and Soon out on DPS, like, they could go almost, Chengdu level of DPS, so they could bust that out and surprise Toronto. I don't think Toronto could pull that off, and I don't think they could counter it. So I'm going to go with Paris Eternal on this one. Ramses, what do you think? Who are you going to take in this one?
See, if this were last stage, this would be an easy Toronto Defiant. But we've just seen that, like, since IM37's come into the starting lineup, it just has not been the same. And this feels weird to say, but I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with Paris Eternal.
That's 2 in a row you've agreed with me on. I mean, I realize you great Nick, but you don't have to flatter me that much.
I really though it feels that Paris has the higher ceiling, right?
They actually really do. Once they changed around their lineup from stage one, I'm talking when they got Hip out of there, they got Ben Best out of there, and they put in Cloudy and Gray, and then they're sticking with Soon, and he's played more of a DPS role, and then they're rotating out their other DPS. They're just their understanding of the comps they need to run a little bit more than Toronto. Toronto has zero flexibility on that team because Asher is not playing for Toronto at all, and nor should he, because Asher is just not good. So Toronto is kind of pigeonholing themselves into we have to play goats, and they're not playing goats well. And Paris can counter goats or run goats. And I think if they counter goats, they will take down Toronto.
Mhm.
Because there's nothing Toronto can do to come back at them. So the only chance Toronto really has, I think, is if Ivy flexes over to Zarya and I'm 37 goes to Baguette. So
Well,
that's the only chance I really have them. And even then, it just makes it a closer matchup. Doesn't give Toronto the definitive advantage.
Yeah, I think when you have a legendary Brigitte player like Shadowburn, that you've seen that on Cast, right? Where they keep talking about how legendary of a they keep using that phrase, the legendary.
Let's
Brigitte player.
let's not trust what the casters say all the
It's-
time. Because
It's a joke, but
yeah, Shadowburn. I will say it this right now, and come at me wherever on whatever platform you want. Shadowburn is the most overrated player in the Overwatch League. Like, Shadowburn, in my mind, probably shouldn't be on a team. I've never been impressed with him. Everyone still has the we love him from the World Cup when he was on Genji playing for Russia, and they were the underdog, and they were beating teams, and they made it to the final 8 on the back of Shadowburn's Genji. But, you know, he signs with Philadelphia. He plays Genji for a little while. Now that he's around real competition, he gets benched on Fusion. All right, fine. He gets benched on Fusion, doesn't play the rest of Season 1. He gets sent over to Paris. Even now on Paris, where he should be like one of the star DPS, he's playing 50% of the time now, and even then he's not looking that great. So I mean, he shows flashes on Pharah, and he's pretty good on his Genji, but he's just not worth having on the team. So Shadowburn to me is somebody who is ridiculously overrated in this league. Sorry if I annoy you, Paris fans or Shadowburn fans, if you're out there.
bottom
But
line,
I like seeing my Genji use his ult more than once every 9 minutes.
Paris will, according to predictions, beat Toronto.
Yes.
And have
Paris-
more map wins than they did in the GOATS meta. Which I think
Exactly.
they might already have at this point, since they do have 10 in Stage 2. I'm gonna double check that really quick. Yeah,
I will
they
also
finished
say
with
this.
9 map wins in Stage 1, so it's already an improvement, but they would look to tie their overall record.
Yeah, I will say this: if there was probably one team that's going to go through a massive overhaul between stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3, Spider drink, is going to be Paris, because you know the EU contender scene is so deep. I can see them getting another DPS player, a whole new tank line, you know, and kind of going to town and really stepping it up. But man, Paris has a chance to be good for stage 3 and 4, but right now they're just not good. But they'll win. They'll win this week.
I'd say they'd be making moves, but Visa Hell does exist.
This is true.
They got like 4 weeks to get that visa stuff in. Maybe. No?
Possibly. I don't know. It just seems like more times than not, EU's always kind of like getting the shaft in that regard when it comes to actually getting their visas accepted and then, flying out to LA at that point. But looking ahead at Stage 2, Week 5 for the Unlimited Leagues out there, of course, all of our hosts are going to share who they are going to start this week. So, we're going to pick our 2 DPS, our 2 tanks, 2 supports, and our flex pick, which is our captain. And, Ed, I know you and I seem to always be neck and neck. I know this past week, we were fairly close starting lineup-wise. I think out of, the top 7, I know I had, 3 of the top 7 scorers in my starting lineup. I think you were probably about the same in that regard. But just as a reminder, the teams that do have multiple games, so you have, a second chance at putting up a higher score. You have Uprising, Outlaws, Dynasty, Shock, Dragons, Defiant, Titans, and the Justice. Not that I would recommend anyone playing any of the Washington Justice players, except maybe Sleepy. He'd probably be the only one worth starting at this point. But for my starting lineup, I'll start with my DPS. I'm going to continue to ride the Fitz train. He's been putting up some consecutive performances. Seems to be averaging anywhere from 160 to 200 plus points. So he's my starting DPS alongside Sinatra. For the support line, I have Aim God from Boston Uprising and Violet from the Shock. For tank line, and I know you and I are usually identical in this regard. I am going to go with Janu and Michelle. And then for my flex pick, the flex pick is always a weird one. Part of me really wants to play Ryu Jaehan as a captain this week, but I'm going to go with Haxel. I'm going to go with the Brigida God himself, because just what he's been able to do on that role far surpasses even some of the Zarya players in the league, where I'm that confident that he's going to be putting up numbers again this week. So, I'm hoping with Titans having 2 games, one of them which we feel like is going to be fairly close, or something that we might see quite a bit of time banks in as they face the Dynasty. I feel like the Titans players, fantasy-wise, are going to be a safer play this week as opposed to some of the prior weeks that we have seen them in. Because I know there's a lot of situations, where Titans just come out and get a 4-0 or a 3-0 if, there happens to be a draw. But Ed, who do you have starting this week in your unlimited drafts?
All right. Like you said, we are always pretty similar. So tank line, Janu, Michelle are my 2 tanks. I went a little different on the supports. I went Violet and Aim God. I'm going with the tried and true. Both are phenomenal support players, but both are playing 2 matchups this week. So you have double the chances that they'll have good games. So you're not relying on them having 1 game and scoring great in that 1 game. My flex, my captain, I'm actually going with a different Vancouver Titan than you.
Okay.
I'm going with Twilight as my captain on this one. And then my DPS, I'm going with Sinatra, just because they have great matchups this week. They play the Fusion and Shanghai Dragons. So they play 2 top 8 teams in the league this week, so hopefully they're not going to 4-0 both of them. And then my random flyer pick, I'm going ding from the Shanghai Dragons as my second DPS. Again, going with he's playing 2 matchups this week, both in good. One good matchup. He's playing the Washington Justice 1 week and the San Francisco Shock another. So he's got 2 chances to put up 1 really good game. So I'm going with Ding as my second DPS. So that's Twilight, Sinatra, Ding, Violet, Aim God, Janu, and Michelle. Hoping that can let me catch up to you a little bit this week.
Well, that really depends on if Dedenne puts up like 140 average like he does some weeks, or if he's going to be on the higher end, putting up like, 160, 180.
Yeah, I'm
which seems to
hoping
be
for
like
the
the
180.
peak.
Hoping for the 180.
All right, but Ramses, what about you? Who do you have starting this week for your Unlimited?
My lineup's pretty similar, but one or two differences. I've got Sinatra, Color Hex. I have as my second DPS just because he's a very big boomer bust guy. And when you're playing, let me check the schedule one more time, because they're playing Gladiators and Washington Justice, and I am hoping that the Gladiators game is as high scoring and competitive as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
He puts a lot of points up when they hit those 5 maps. So Sinatra, Color Hex, Aim God and Violet like everybody else, Janu and Michelle like everybody else. And then I did what Totem thought about doing, and I have Ryu Jaehong as my captain this week.
What do you guys think about Sleepy?
I would wait.
He's got 2 matchups this week. Flex support.
Mm-hmm.
Could he be startable in Unlimited?
I'm trying to pull up what he did in the prior week. So when he debuted for Washington, he played 1 game and he put up 170.25.
And that's after they said 2-3 hours of practice with the team.
Right. And even for
they did play the Valiant for that match.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just seeing where he ranked support wise for best that week. So looking at week 8, because that was the week that he debuted, he was behind Shu, Dogman, Izayaki, Boombox, were the people above him. So he was a top 5 support in his debut on limited, amount of scrim time. With that in mind, knowing, they had the week off, they've had a pretty lengthy duration to get some more scrim time. Like, I feel like Sleepy's worth a strong consideration. I don't know if I feel like he'd be more of like the captain or like the flex pick.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be stronger flex support options for your support 1 and your support 2. But I would definitely think that, if you're looking for support or just a flex pick, I could see him being top 10 points.
No, I could. And he falls into... He's got two starts to get a really good 1 series point total, which I like. I like hedging my bets. If I had to choose Sleepy over someone who's got 1 shot to make it, like if I was to pick Sleepy versus, let's say, Shu from the Guangzhou Charge, who's only playing 1 map one series against the Houston Outlaws, I'd go Sleepy over Shu. Now, if it was, Shu's the better player than Sleepy. I'll just say that. But, fantasy-wise, I would say Sleepy has a better shot of having a single match better than Shu would. So, I would not sleep on Sleepy.
Ding. Ed's full of puns.
Is that the how the alarm sounds?
Yes. But Alarm's not 18 yet.
He's not, but
when does he turn 18?
Not soon enough. I'm not looking it up right now.
Okay, because that dude needs to be in the Overwatch
but
League.
By the way, because this is alarm related, Fusion Uni did pick up a Mat 5 win tonight in the semifinals.
Whatever. They lost. They're dead to me.
They lost in the regular season, so they're dead to
They
you.
lost 1 match.
1 out of 31.
In 4 seasons. They're dead to me.
Classic Ed.
Yep. I'm also going to ask you this. Seum Su. Is he starting?
He's been playing a lot of the maps.
Is he Stitch gonna start?
I feel like a lot of that is based on what team they're going up against and whether they are Pharah specialist teams. So, like, if you're facing, like, dragons or the hunters, you're more likely to see Stitch playing in that case. But outside of that, I think, like, maybe Outlaws would kind of be in a similar case. If Drake's gonna be in the rotation full time now. But outside of that, I feel like Solomon Sue is still the better option. I just feel like they think Stitch provides a little bit more flexibility, but in situations when you're just gonna have a 3-3 mirror, Solomon Sue is definitely gonna be the better option of the two.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the last one I'm gonna bring up for Unlimited, and this is more for the flex role, and that is Rascal. The reason I bring Rascal up is not because he's a very good Big At player, but because he's also the best Baptiste player we've seen in the league. And Baptiste, when he was on Baptiste, he was putting out hella healing numbers. Like crazy healing amounts, as well as doing damage. Could Rascal really be the sleeper as the top captain pick for this week?
I would say no. Looking back at his performance this stage, while yes, he has been the best Baptiste player, fantasy-wise, across the 3 weeks that we've seen him, he's only averaging about 100 points a week, which is not a lot. I know 1 week he put up like 119. There was 1 week where he was below 100.
But that's also the San Francisco Shock in general.
Yes.
Like the Shock in general have been crazy. Like that week that he scored under 100 points, Sinatra was number 1 on the team with 133 points.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've just been rolling over everyone.
Yeah, and that's a problem too because they haven't dropped a single map yet. So like in that situation, as a support player, I'd be very hesitant to even put him in consideration, just knowing that chances are your like map average isn't going to be as good as it can be, especially when there have been so many lopsided affairs with the Shock.
Mm-hmm.
But man, is it fun to watch. He's probably the most, if I can one player to watch like on cam, like follow, it would be Rascal. It's some of the most interesting matches I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Go Rascal.
Alright, well, with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to go leave us a review over on iTunes or your podcasting app of choice. We're always looking for insight on how we can make for a better listening experience for you guys. If you would like to find additional Overwatch-related content, be sure to check out Overwatch Recall, which is our content creators hub, where you can find Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League, really all things related to Overwatch are going to be on there on our website at owlnshow.com/OWRecall, and then every Sunday night we release the episodic listings of all of the past week's podcast episodes. That is also on our website, or you could also find it on Twitter at OWRecall. But Ed, we have a number of different ways how our listeners can get a hold of us, so why don't you go ahead and let them know how they can do so.
All right. Well, you can reach us through email at owlnshow.com, on Twitter at OWL We do have a website, and that is www.owlnshow.com. We do have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We are on Discord, and that's discord.me/OWLNshow. So come over there, chit chat with us, hang out, all that fun stuff. We are streaming presently live on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLNshow. We are a Twitch affiliate, so help support this show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly. So we have Overwatch League Network, which airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. OWL by the Numbers this show airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then the show Totem and I Do, Heroes Never Die, a variety Overwatch show, airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams, when available, air Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. We do also have a Patreon, and that is patreon.com/OWL Network. So we recently launched our network's Patreon page for those that want to support our Overwatch network even further. So tiers start at just $1 a month. You too can join the likes of our master and above patrons, Blazing Bob, Brendan, and Gabby, in helping our network grow. So thanks again all for the support. Random thought of the week.
42.
Is this where Ed spoils Endgame for everybody?
I'm not going to spoil Endgame. Why would I do that? I'm not LaShawn McCoy. So, all right, here's the thing. In Infinity War, when Tony Stark is literally in space, how is he getting cell phone reception? Like, no network. I could be in my basement and I won't get cell phone reception. He's in outer space and he can talk to Pepper.
Those arc reactors, dude. Those arc reactors are such great cell phone boosts.
No, they're not.
You don't know that. You don't know
You don't know that either.
It's not the point. You don't know that.
Yeah, you can't argue with like, yeah, you don't know it because I also don't know it. That's not a valid argument.
Intro to Critical Thinking told me that.
Dude, are you quoting a freshman in college class to me right now?
Oh, I agree with you, Ed. I'm just being.
Hey,
polite.
listen here, 18-year-old sorority girl. I don't want to hear any of your crap about Intro to Critical Thinking or any of the psychotherapy that you learned while in college. So back up off me and answer me why he can use his cell phone in space.
I don't have anything for this one, unfortunately.
The Iron Man suit is like a giant antenna, and that's why.
But it doesn't matter because he's in outer space. If the suit's like an antenna, it has to connect to other antennas. And he's in space. Alright. I'm going to move on from this one. You can reach me personally on Twitter at Edanar Overwatch. It's EDANAR Overwatch. And I will also be guest hosting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central around the Payload. So come check that out. That should be a barrel of fun.
You better win.
Our boy made it! Our boy made it!
I'm going to do my best to win. I am not above bribing, sucking up to the host, throwing other contestants under the bus.
You never do that.
Just mind you, Bob was on and won the last time he was on. And
So
and
I
you
should
need
easily win.
bragging rights over Spider.
Oh, dude, if I win and if I win and Spider's been on it like twice now, and he hasn't won once, he'll never hear the end of it. But Totem, where can they find you at?
Well, I'm over on Twitter at TumblyDrunkCTR. You can find Blazin' Bob on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That is BLAZZIN_BOB. But Ramses, you're also over on the Twitter sphere, so why don't you let our listeners know where you're at there?
Thanks, Totem. You can find me at Ramses_OW, and you can find the show that I do. We don't stream it, so I don't know why I'm telling you what nights we record. But our show that comes out every Tuesday, Push the Point, which is my Overwatch show I do with Labosco. So that comes out every Tuesday. You can find that show at Push Point Pod. Push Point POD.
Yeah, there you can not see, Labosco not having to dye his hair on future episodes because of the Twitter poll.
His hair survived, just barely.
Just barely. But anyways, guys, thank you so much again for hanging out with us tonight on OWL by the Numbers. This has been episode number 14. I'm going to go through our Twitch host to, I'll recap so you guys can go troll Bob and Mel, and, you know, Andres, after the homestand weekend.
I'm gonna ask my question in their chat.
You do that, and hopefully they'll have an answer for you. But with that being said, guys, I hope you have a good night, and we'll see you back for the next one. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Later,
Bye.
guys.